Okay, wonderful. This is so exciting seeing this turnout on a Tuesday evening. Give yourselves a good hand for making this a priority. My name is Dr. Janine Evans, and I am a member and the vice chair of the Roanoke County Democratic Committee. I'm also the vice chair of the Social Justice Committee, which is a new committee for the Roanoke County Dems. So we are so excited. This is the first program that we planned, and I cannot tell you what we've been through to get this up and going. But we're so excited to see the enthusiasm from the community to come out and to discuss issues that are important when we speak about social justice. As we know, social justice is being threatened across our country, where rights are being taken away from people, communities of people are being dehumanized. And it is so important that we know that our local candidates and our local leaders are connected to these issues so that when we start seeing it permeate into the Roanoke Valley, we are going to have people that are going to be willing to stand up. So tonight we are going to bring forward a group of community leaders and our local individuals who are running for public office to address these issues with each of you. Many of you we saw coming in the door, and we gave you a paper with a QR code. Now, if you're my generation, you're like, what do I do with this? If you didn't want to be embarrassed, you followed the rules and you clipped. We're trying to conserve paper when we talk about being environmental friendly. You know what would happen with all those pieces of paper? Where would they be left when you walk out the door? In your chair or in the trash can. So we didn't want that to happen tonight, so we gave you a QR code. If you did not receive it, there are positions around the room. Please, if you see anybody, don't you love these shirts, by the way? Oh, thank you. If you see somebody in these shirts, these are all members of our committee. Feel free to ask. The bathrooms are out here. You go out this door and you make 2 quick rights, and the bathrooms are located that way. So I want to also introduce to you, and you'll hear from her this evening, my co-chair, Ms. Barb Hudkin. Give her a hand. Barb and I work together here at Roanoke College. Yes, together. So it's great to be back with you. And I can't give this to advance. I can't get it to the board. Okay, we have a couple of people that I would like to bring to the podium to bring you greetings this evening. The first is Ms. Reverend Kelly Shushak, who is the wife of the president of Roanoke College. I do not like using the first lady, and I understand neither do you. She is very established herself, and she is the left and the right hand of her husband, who is providing leadership to Roanoke College. I'm going to have her come to the mic and say a few words.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is so exciting. I didn't know if there would be 200 or 200, but I'm going to call it like 50 or 60, which is just a beautiful crowd to have gathered this evening. As Deneen said, my husband, Frank Shushak, is the humbled and very blessed both president of Roanoke College. I think that's why I get to be here to welcome you this evening. So on behalf of Roanoke College, it is with joy and hope and grit that I'm excited to welcome all of us to this conversation this evening. I said that I'm bringing joy and hope and grit because here at Roanoke College, we found these to be the essential elements for every public conversation about justice that changes anything. Joy and hope and grit, these, in my opinion, race ahead of judgment and desperation and malaise. So you know this, but tonight this is destined, I think, to be a momentous dialogue about social justice, which is just a conversation about how we will live well together. And by well, I mean whole, how we will live whole together. I think it's a conversation that wants to be important enough to have a compelling answer to this question. How will the world be different tomorrow because of the way we gather tonight? How will the world be different tomorrow because of the way we all gather tonight? And judgment, frustration, desperation, and malaise won't get us there. They do feel powerful, right? But they are not forward moving. So while it's tempting to reduce almost any forum to problem solving or to finger pointing, The way I think we change tomorrow is to elevate every public conversation toward possibility and toward sign me upping. So I hope that's why most of us are here tonight, and it should be for everyone. So candidates in the room, we're looking forward to seeing joy and hope and grit from you. And community leaders and community, it's up to us to frame the conversation with joy and with hope and with grit. To me, that feels worthwhile and full of life. I hope it does to you as well. Here at Roanoke College, we say, here we go. And that's where we're going. Full of possibility, full of hope and joy and grit. So welcome to Roanoke College on this night, already pregnant with possibility to change our world. I'm looking forward to the conversation we'll have together.
Thank you for looking at our ex-president. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to bring to the mic Dr. Teresa Rainey. She is the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion here at Roanoke College. It's my honor to have her here as an alum of Roanoke College and as the first Charter Director of Diversity. I'm so excited to see my alma mater move forward in their commitment to diversity and inclusion.
It is an honor to be here with you all tonight. When I think about social justice and what it is that we're trying to do, not only in our community, but also here at Roanoke College, it means a lot to me to be here. I'm here to learn. I'm here to engage. And what I like about my position is the very first word is community. So I really have an opportunity to not only learn from you, but also gather what we have at Roanoke College to share with you. I think that this is a time where we really need to get together as a community. I think this is a time when so much that we think about that we think is just is being attacked. That hurts my heart. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but that really hurts my heart. So I want to do whatever I can on behalf of the college and personally, me as Teresa, to do what needs to be done in order for us to move forward. And as I said, the important part about my job is the first word is community. So I'm hoping that I'm going to make connections here, and if there's someone that I need to meet, I've only been in the state for a year and 10 months, please let me know who I need to meet, because that's what I've been doing. I've been meeting different people in the Salem Roanoke area. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad that this is the place where you wanted to have this event. And didn't know it was your first event, so I feel extra special that you're doing it here at Roanoke College. Thank you so much.
Okay, I would like to have members of the Social Justice Committee to stand when I call your name. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Dr. Denise Evans. My co-chair is Barbara Hutkin. Ms. Jessica Swanson. Jessica, with that. Ms. Ann Armstrong. Ms. Beth Gunter, who is also the chair of the Roanoke County Democratic Committee. Mr. Brandon Lewis. And Mr. Marcus Beal, who without him, we would have no technology. He is the most important. Okay, as you can see, our agenda is present. I'm not going to read everything to you, but what I am going to do is to invite Mr. Brandon Lewis to the podium so he can get the party started. He is going to introduce our community representatives.
I don't know, man. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. I'm actually really excited to see the turnout. It's been an event we've been doing, planning for a while, so for it's actually really exciting. I'm going to introduce all the community members. Once the community members have spoken, we will then swap and we will have minutes to go and speak. But I want to introduce all of them first. So at the end, we have Brenda Hale, who is the president of the Roanoke Valley NAACP. We have, is it Katie
Katie Sawak.
Yes, Katie Zawacki from the Points of Diversity. We have Carolina Smales, who is representing the Latinx community and has started a neuroscience committee, yes. We have Dr. Jatinder Desai, who is a local psychiatrist and representing the Indian community. Karen Mikowski, who is part of the Blue Ridge Independent Living Center. Rabbi Kathy Cohen, who is with Temple Emmanuel. And then from the Diversity Center, we actually have Muhammad El Shawarbi, Reverend James Vega, and Anita Huntington. So please give a round of applause for all of our people. So first up, we're going to have our own Diversity Center. Step aside.
Hello, everybody. I want to start by thanking the Roanoke County Democratic Committee for having us and for everyone else that's here. I'm going to start out by just introducing what the Roanoke Diversity Center does, and then I will pass it on to fellow board members to speak to the issues. The Roanoke Diversity Center is the local community center that supports, advocates, and for the LGBTQIA+ community. That is our mission. We are sadly the only center like this for many, many miles. The closest one is Richmond, and we really even outside of the borders of Virginia, there's nothing that close to do it. We have a lot of programs like we advocate for sports through our Blue Ridge Pride Sports programs. We have one of the largest queer libraries in the East Coast that we house in the center in downtown Roanoke. And we offer lots of support groups like Transparent, like AA, Al-Anon, all of those. But the biggest thing that we offer is a safe space. So we have open hours and we offer a safe space for people in the community to come. And that's really where we get the window into our community and what affects them. We get youth that come in with their parents who are very supportive. It's great to see. But we also get a lot of youth who don't have a community and don't have supportive family or structure that come to us. We have adults, not just youth, of course, everyone that kind of needs that community comes in into our center to find that safe space. And so through that, we really find we have that window into the issues in this area that affect us. And we're going to show what you all can do to help us with that locally. And with that, I will pass it on to Reverend James Vega.
Good evening, everybody. There are many issues I could highlight, but tonight I'll just highlight a few that are currently affecting our community. At the Roanoke Diversity Center, we see firsthand the challenges facing people in the LGBTQIA+ community. Discrimination, limited legal protections, bullying, inadequate support, violence, and lack of representation all contribute to a society that fails to fully embrace and empowers its LGBTQIA+ community. Discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations based on sexual orientation and gender identity continue to be an issue. Lack of housing is an issue for many in this community, but especially the youth. LGBTQIA+ youth have a 120% increase of being unsheltered. This specific youth makes up 33% of young people accessing unsheltered services. To ensure this community has access to the necessary services, it is crucial for the state level government to allocate funds and to support programs specifically designed to address their unique needs. Access to inclusive and culturally competent healthcare services is vital for our community, but unfortunately, it's not always available. Many healthcare providers lack the training and knowledge necessary to provide appropriate care to LGBTQIA+ community. The Roanoke Diversity Center has a mandate to educate and provides training to many organizations such as Carillion. However, we need state government to mandate that healthcare providers receiving training on providing cultural competent and inclusive healthcare services. Transgender and non-binary individuals often face much more significant challenges accessing healthcare. Transgender people have a range of reproductive healthcare needs, specifically under attack right now. It is essential to recognize and respect their reproductive choices and provide them with appropriate services. And finally, for me, LGBTQIA+ individuals often face unique mental health challenges due to social stigmas, discrimination, prejudice, and experience of stress just for being a member of this community. These factors can lead to increased rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, self-harm, and suicide. Lack of mental health services and counseling that are inclusive and culturally competent can have significant negative impacts on the mental health and well-being of these individuals. Just as we need state support in housing and physical health, it is just as much as needed in mental health services, the LGBTQIA+ individuals.
The same challenges that queer adults have are amplified in queer youth. They also struggle with housing stability and mental health. The statistics are scary. 1 in 6 LGBT youth have considered suicide. Queer youth lack the ability to self-advocate in a meaningful way in a political environment that is hostile to their very existence. While politicians can't stop children from being bullied and discriminated at school, or force a parent to accept a child's identity, they can fight against legislation targeting queer youth and help enact legislation that protects this vulnerable population. There's so much more complexity to a child's identity and needs than just bathrooms and drag and sports. It is important to create a legal landscape that allows children to live freely, that does not penalize parents for supporting their children in their choice of name and identity, that does not penalize adults for ensuring that children receive gender-affirming medical care or allow government-sanctioned outing when children speak with school officials. It doesn't really matter if a child is named Margaret and they want to go by Mars and then later Mary and then Mars again. What matters is that every child is afforded the opportunity to live long enough to do so. Roanoke has more resources for queer youth than surrounding areas. The Diversity Center has teenage-specific programming, like a gamer night where teenagers get together and play video games. And there's Youth Sega, which is another LGBT nonprofit organization, which runs a support group, and there's a camp for queer youth. Funding nonprofits like these are a direct way to support queer youth. These organizations create spaces for queer youth that they're not receiving at home or at school. It's a very special, sacred place. It's important that places like that continue to exist. Politicians also have an opportunity to support family-affirming legislation, ensuring that in the event that the political clock continues to move backwards, the fundamental liberties of LGBTQ parents are continued to be protected, especially their right to parenthood, ensuring that parents, particularly second parents. So say you have 2 lesbian parents. The parent who did not give birth to that child has the opportunity to be considered and called that child's mother. Right now, both parents can be put on their birth certificate, but you see situations like what just happened in Oklahoma, where a sperm donor has petitioned and granted, although I imagine will be overturned, custody of their child. It's important that parents have that same standing and access to their children, regardless of whether or not they gave birth to that child.
I just want to close out really quickly to the candidates with, as you can hear from all of this, that centers and small local organizations like ours are being asked by places like Carillion and other businesses to come in and help them kind of educate them about stuff like this. However, a place like the Roanoke Diversity Center is a volunteer-based run organization, Our funding comes from fundraising. And really, this is where the state really needs to come in, especially in rural areas and places that are not necessarily just Richmond or Northern Virginia, where organizations like these need support from the state, honestly, to really come in and help us actually give those this education. So that's just what I'm going to close out. And again, thank you all. And
Thank you all for who spoke. We wrote about this center. As a member of the LGBT community, this is also touches me personally. So I appreciate it coming out. Next, we are going to have Brenda Hale, the president of the Roanoke Valley speak.
Good evening, everyone. I am honored and blessed to be here this evening by Dr. Deneen Evans. She kept asking and asking, and I said, I'm going to give in. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I'm going to show up. Folks, I am the 10-term president of the Roanoke branch in AACP. We are one of the 5 top branches in the state of Virginia. There's over 200 branches here. We have the best youth council in the state. We have the best AXO program in the state. And I want to point out a young past president of our youth council, Mr. Faison Nash. Faison, stand up and let them know who you are. He chose to return to the Roanoke Valley because he has so much to offer. Folks, you know, speaking of the branch, I'm fearless. I'm not afraid to do anything. And our branch is the only branch in the Commonwealth of Virginia that I appointed an LGBTQ chair, Mr. Garland Gravely. I'm very proud of that, because there's such a need. We were chartered in 1933. So for 90 years, we've been making a difference in the Roanoke Valley. And of course, we address education issues, health issues. Discrimination never takes a day off. Oh, do you hear me? It never takes a day off. So we work tirelessly in the branch. What I want to hone in on tonight is voting. How it is a constitutional right for us to have access to the ballot box. There's so many states trying to take away our rights right now that we're standing on the shoulders of those that fought for years the poll taxes. I know y'all don't even know the word, some of these young people standing in the room tonight, what a poll tax is, a literacy test. You know, when the United States Supreme Court, I don't want to speak bad of the court, but they did something wrong. In 2013, they decimated the Voting Rights Act that was put in place and signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965. They decimated. But you know what they also said? They told Congress, fix it. But has Congress fixed it? No. And you know what has happened here in the Roanoke Valley because they did not fix it? The Roanoke County Registrar's Office used to be where? Electric Road. Where is it now? Out in the woods in Denton. No accessibility. No bus line. So see, that's a terrible thing. And see, I have no teeth to fight that. I have no teeth. I have to rely on the conscience of individuals. The more we talk about it, I hope they get the message, but then what's going to change their hearts? Nothing is going to change. And what Congressman John Lewis fought so hard for was the Voting Rights Act amendment. It was and has not been passed yet. It's still sitting in Washington, D.C., waiting to be heard, waiting to hear from citizens all across this nation that things are not right. So see, yes, it's a fight. And I want to honor the memory of Congressman John Lewis by continuing to bring it up until enough change has happened that we will have every citizen in Roanoke County available to go vote and not have hazards placed in their way. So that's all I want to say tonight, because you know I can say a lot more. But I think it was so nice to meet you. This is the first time, this is the first time I met the diversity director. So it's very nice. Thank you, Dr. Deneen Evans, for allowing me to come back on campus with a purpose in mind. Thank you, and I really appreciate it. And anything else that I can say to improve on tonight, I stand ready. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and especially in Virginia, they didn't pass, but there was legislation introduced to limit early voting and to introduce voting ID cards, which predominantly impact communities of color. So thank you for touching on that very important issue. Up next, we will have Karen Mikowski from the Blue Ridge Independent Center.
Oh, goodness.
There you go. You can come up here or you can sit down.
Oh, no, I'm going to be lazy and sit. So my name is Karen Mikulski Carney. I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Independent Living Center. We have been in existence since 1989. We're a private nonprofit corporation, and what makes us unique is that 51% of our board of directors must be people with disabilities, and the majority of our staff also have disabilities. We are non-residential, which means we don't have people that live at the center. The folks that we work with actually live in the community where they should live. In addition to assisting individuals, we also work with the community to try to make sure that the community is accessible to individuals with disabilities. And on a daily basis, I really have to stop and remind myself that it is 2023. I got a call from a friend of mine. She needed to have a gynecological appointment. She could not find a gynecologist who had an accessible exam table. Again, it is 2023, right? One of the hospitals in the area suggested that they could do the gynecological exam from one of the tables in the surgical department. 2023. There are a lot of issues that impact people with disabilities. One of the main ones is the lack of affordable, accessible housing. If you are an individual with a disability, or if you're an individual who becomes an individual with a disability and you haven't worked enough, you are probably going to be eligible for a program called Supplemental Security Income. The maximum amount that you can receive under Supplemental Security Income is $914 a month. $914 a month, which is less than $11,000 a year. According to all of the literature that you read, nobody should spend more than 30% of their income on housing. That would be $275 a month. Now, if you know of a decent place that somebody can rent for $275 a month, please let me know. We have people with disabilities who are living in nursing homes simply because they cannot find affordable, accessible housing. We have the state, the federal government paying $8,000 a month to keep a person who does not need to be in a nursing home in a nursing home. That same person could live in the community for $4,000 a month. You would think that somebody would figure out that it is less expensive to keep people in the community with services than it is to put them in a nursing home. The other issue that impacts people with disabilities to be independent in the community is transportation. Salem, Roanoke, Vinton have public transportation. Granted, it's limited, but at least there is public transportation. Any place where there is public transportation, they have to provide another service called paratransit. And that paratransit service has to operate the same time as regular transportation. But if you live in Roanoke County, they don't have regular paratransit, but they do provide a service called CORTRAN. CORTRAN does not operate the same hours as public transportation. Sometimes we get tickets for events at the Civic Center or the Salem, and I don't know what their current name is, Red Sox, is that the, okay, sorry. The Salem Red Sox will tell us that they would like to provide us with tickets for our consumers to come to a baseball game. Well, that's great. So our folks could get there by paratransit, be there for when they throw out the ball at 7:05, but they have to leave before the game ends because transportation ends at 8:30. If you're a person with a disability, if you're a person without a disability in this area and you want to work the second shift, you can take a bus or paratransit to get to work, but you can't get back. So transportation impacts people with disabilities to a great degree. You know, DMV used to be located in an area where people could ride paratransit or take the public bus to the DMV office. They moved out to, I want to say, Plantation Road. If you live in the city of Roanoke, Vinton, or Salem, the paratransit services that are offered cannot take you to the DMV because it's more than 3/4 of a mile off of the public bus line. We were looking at a building that we wanted to lease. It was on Hirschberger Road. I called the executive director at the paratransit office and I said, Curtis, this is where we're thinking about moving. Can you transport people to the office? He said, we can transport people and stop on Hirschberger Road in front of the building, but we can't pull into your parking lot because the parking lot is more than 3/4 of a mile off of the public bus line. Kid you not. Do you know it's easier to get into a nursing home than it is to get services in your home? You don't have to have an assessment to go into a nursing home. But you do have to have an assessment to get home and community-based services. And the waiting list for those services is unbelievable. So, you know, we have a gentleman whose doctor said he needed to be in a nursing home. He needed 24-hour care. Well, somebody sat with him in the nursing home for 24 hours. Do you know how much interaction he had with the nursing home staff? A total of about an hour and a half. But he needed nursing home care. The other issue that impacts people with disabilities, of course, is employment. Up until the past year or two, people with disabilities were the only minority population that could be paid sub minimum wages. We finally got that changed. When I first came to the Roanoke area, I worked for what was then called, and which was okay then, politically correct, the Association for Retarded Citizens. There were people that came to the workshop that worked 40 hours a week and had to pay for their transportation to get there. And so by the end of the week, they actually owed money to work 40 hours a week and get transportation to and from the workshop. There's lots of other issues that impact people with disabilities. Another one is personal assistance services. Personal assistants help people with disabilities with daily living activities that they are unable to do by themselves. The individuals that serve as personal assistants do not have benefits. I believe that the General Assembly just approved some sick leave for them. They're not paid at the level that they should be paid, and it has become extremely difficult both for home health agencies and for individuals with disabilities to find reliable personal assistance. And they are very, very important for people with significant disabilities. So I'm hoping, candidates, that once you get where you are hoping to go, that you will take into consideration all of the issues that impact people with disabilities, and that you will please do something about those issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. And this is also a place that I learned on now. So thank you to Jessica Swanson, who's on our committee, who brought this issue into the Social Justice Committee. I wasn't thinking about it, and so it's nice to hear these issues, and hopefully more can be done about it. Next, we will have Dr. Jitendra Desai, who's a psychiatrist in Roanoke and representative in the
Thank you. I feel honored to be here with such distinguished panels. Where do I start? India has a motto, and it goes something like this. It's in Sanskrit, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is a family. It's on a slightly grandiose scale compared to it takes a village. But that is what allows India to be a rather diverse country. Just to give you an example, comparison, India can only be compared with the continent of Europe. In Europe, there are so many countries with different languages, different cuisines, different social customs, and dressing and all. The same way in India, there are about 28 languages, not dialects, 28 languages, and we better learn to get along with people. The common language in India is English. We inherited that from the Britishers when they were ruling us. And we have a national language. Using those two languages, people can travel anywhere in India. So India is a very diverse country, and we feel very comfortable with the diversity. Couple of glowing examples of that. India has a lot of kingdoms, or used to have a lot of kingdoms, and these are small kingdoms. Well, one time, probably 500 years ago, a group of religious minority was extradited from Iran, and they had no place to go. These are Zoroastrians, and they were not Islamic people. So the country basically decided to get rid of them, and they traveled by ship to India, landed in a small kingdom on the west coast of India, and the king invited them and said, "What do you offer? I'll let you have a place to stay and prosper. But what do you offer? And the leader of that group said, give me a glass of milk. The milk was placed in front of him. He took some sugar, added to the milk, and said, just like the sugar has dissolved in the milk, we are going to be that part of your country. We will prosper, we will help, and will enrich your culture. And that community has never had any issues with people of India welcome them. Another example of accepting diversity is during the World War II, there were Polish children and women who were sent off to Siberia. And in 1942, they were put on a ship. And again, they landed somewhere on the west coast of India because nobody wanted to have them. They tried many different countries. They came to India, and the king there accepted them. He kept them and started a school for the children for about 7 years. And when the war ended, they all went back to Poland. And there are a lot of landmarks in Poland that have that king's name written on it. So the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is alive and well. It hasn't reached perfection, but as I said, India being very multilingual, to get by, go to 40 miles away from where you are, it may be a different language altogether. And talking about traveling, Mark Twain said it best. He said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. We need to get out of our silos and go out and be with other people, walk in their shoes to understand what they're dealing with. And it will really help. I want to thank City of Roanoke for proclaiming, what was it? South Asian and Pacific Islanders. They proclaimed the month of May in honor of that community. And I was really glad to hear that. I'm glad I'm not in Florida, where diversity is not allowed anymore. Okay, that was my political, how shall I put it, sarcasm. Indian community here has prospered. They're hardworking people generally, and they run convenience stores, motels, and they're professionals as well. But we have had our share of vandalism, murders, and robberies. I think the murders and robberies occurred in places of business where people saw it as a soft target. And we live in that anticipation that it could happen anytime to anybody. But these are not hate-related crimes. I want to point out, they're not picking on Indians because they are Indians, but because they are soft targets. And we need to be more safe as well. Our temple was vandalized, and we reported that to the police, and the police was very helpful. The police has also come in a few times to train us if there was a mass shooting possibility, what to do, an emergency plan. Our customs are different, and we are trying to assimilate into the American mainstream, but please forgive your neighbors who happen to be Indians if their homes are lighted up in the month of October. and not around Christmas time. That's when they're celebrating the Light Festival, which is a very important festival for people from India. In conclusion, I would like to say that America has come a long way since the 50s or 30s, as Brenda had mentioned earlier, but we are hitting some big potholes right now, and these are going to continue for a while. And what we need to do is we all need to be doing something different at the grassroots level, and we need to pray for better angels in America to prevail. I would be lying if I didn't tell you that every time we have a Festival of India at Elmwood Park, we are most concerned about safety and security. And so we have sheriff's deputies and police officers. And as one of the organizers of those events in public, I'm constantly surveilling what's going on and who is doing what. So that's where we are. And we have to be careful, but we really need to pray for better angels for everybody. And we need to be that example ourselves too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Desai. And I'm being told that for all the speakers, including myself, if we can speak up a little bit louder, because people on Zoom are having a hard time hearing us. So just keep that in mind. Additionally, just to make sure that we get to all the candidates and everything, for the rest of the speakers, we can try to keep it in the 5-minute range. We're going a little bit over, but not too terribly. So the next person we're going to introduce is Carolina Smollett from the Latinx community. I also have been told that she goes by Carol Joy. So I will let her take it away.
Thank you. Gracias. Hola.
Hola.
Hola. ¿Cómo están?
¿Cómo está?
Muy bien.
I am very happy to be here. It is also an honor for me to share the panel with such kind of individuals. We are all lovers of social justice, and that is one of the principles and the values that was inserted in me since I was a little kid. Obviously by modeling my parents, who are also very compassionate and hardworking individuals. I am from Venezuela, and yes, my husband is Eric Smalls, so my last name changed from my Latino last name to Smalls. My name is Carolina Smalls. Many people know me as Carol Joy because I am an artist. I am a creative writer of children's books. And for 20 years, I was doing neuroscience research. And I kept volunteering at the hospitals because I'm an artist, singing for children who were at the ICU and families who were having a lonely time. And since I was an immigrant and I myself was having a lonely time in this country, missing my family, I said, might as well do my skills, right, in a good way. So I used to go to the NICU and sing for the families, and they told me how much joy my songs and my story brought them, and they actually named me Carol Joy, which is my artistic name right now. So after working for 2 decades almost in neuroscience research, I'm a chemical engineer by training, and my focus has been on the chemicals associated to happy emotions and the chemicals associated to not so happy emotions, but that are very important for our lives because they help us survive. I've been studying that for a long time, but in 2020, when COVID-19 happened, and we all were, in a way, transformed, I hope so for the best, I had this awakening, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm, past 40, and I don't know how long I have in this side of the world, so I want to really do something impactful. I want to leave a good legacy. And I decided to found my company, Joy of Interaction Neuron, Joy Neuron, to teach children at the elementary school level more about the nature of their brain, to let them know they are beautiful and perfect the way they are, without labels of any community.
Mhm.
That all communities here and all minorities are just as beautiful, and they bring so much color to this world in many different ways. To teach them that anxiety is part of life, and that at some point, sadly, I don't know when it took off as a health analyst, but maybe like 10 years ago, everybody, every single media was like, oh, you're anxious, you're anxious, you're anxious, you're unhappy, you're unhappy, you're unhappy. And you get the message repeated over and over and over again. And then they try to tell you, and the only thing that makes you happy is if you buy this, or if you go here, or if you buy a house, like all these kind of like things that you can buy that supposedly make you happy. And I want to revert that. I said, no, I want to teach the children, first of all, to love themselves for who they are, the humans they are, the way that they can help their community, the way that they can help somebody else at the school, the way that they can welcome someone at the school. I want to go rather to that label and not to the label of, what community you belong with, or are you a Latino, or what do you speak? Are you from India? Are you from LGBT? No. At elementary school level, the most important thing is you are a human being, and everything you feel is everything I feel. And everything we feel has something to reveal. So let's learn more about, what is our human nature and what can we do with the skill sets that we have. If we, in terms of the government, if we support more initiatives that can start prevention at the elementary school level, rather than waiting for middle school, which is when most of the substance abuse and mental health prevention initiatives start, I think we have a better chance for the children to really guide them into that behavior, into the mindset that, it hurts me that another individual hurts. At some point, I was interpreting Spanish-English, a little girl. I wasn't the traumatologist doctor. And this little girl said, that she was there because she fell on a bathtub. And while the doctor was evaluating this girl, he said to her, these bruises correspond to the bathtub, but these ones don't. Tell me what happened. The doctor separated the mother immediately to one room, separated the girl to another. I had like a nod here. As an interpreter, I don't supposed to say anything. I'm just the voice of the patient. And I'm like, oh my gosh. When the doctor started asking the little girl what happened, the little girl said that some kids at school had pushed her down the stairs and told her, go back to Mexico where you belong. Do those kids really meant those words? I doubt it. I think they're modeling things that they hear at home. I think they're modeling things that are somehow normalized, this type of behavior. It is okay because, someone said that what are Latinos doing in this country? So they have to go back home. That's what they hear. So that's what kind of like they convey. When the mother was told this, the mother started going in tears. And the doctor said, did you know that this happened to your daughter? And the mother said, see, yes. But I talked to the principal. And the principal said, kids are kids. There is nothing I can do. And then the mother told me in confidence, I was the interpreter, no tengo papeles. I don't have papers. I don't have legal papers in the United States. So that person, that mother felt so helpless. So helpless. At that moment, I took off my hat of interpreter and I said, you know what? I'm gonna get fired. I'm not supposed to do this. I said to her, take a picture of the bruises of your girl and go and tell the principal again that this is the medical report, and that if she doesn't talk to the kids who did this to the girl, that you're gonna take this to the local news, and I am gonna connect you with someone at the local news. So, I went a step beyond and totally out of my role, but I felt good because it was the right thing. So, in terms of I know these politicians, and I am the person who supports kind-hearted individuals, regardless of what, political party they represent. I have to say like that. This is my most honest way. But I know you guys, and I really have big faith on you. And so my key message for today is, if we can teach the children early enough, if we can engage them in play, if we can guide them and guide their thought process, because they're learning things, they're modeling things they see. If we can be better role models, not just, parents at home, but teachers. Teachers haven't seen more than 60% of their lives. So that is so crucial that we go to the education system and then we start more and more initiatives to do prevention of this type of situation. Particularly for me, the greatest problem, I believe, is happening with humanity. It is beyond what we hear all the time from the World Health Organization, which, all the time, cardiovascular diseases, and, and diabetes and all that. Sure. All those things that are very traceable. But there are so many things that are untraceable. The lack of compassion and the lack of empathy, to me, is one of the worst problems. It is truly what can deteriorate humanity. The fact that a kid, that a teenager, doesn't hurt when they see another one hurt, we have a big problem there. So we need to do more initiatives, educational initiatives, to have more empathy building activities. And that comes as in a simple world. Let's do more guided, play activities. Let's bring the families together, not just for PTA meetings to say, support this and donate this for this. No. We need to take a more active role in education. We need to take a more active role, we that are, justice, mission-driven individuals. This is the moment. I mean, if COVID-19 didn't teach us, how important is human interaction for life, for your brain, for your health, for your mental health, I don't know what would. Because truly, that was transformative for everybody. So this is the moment when we, as leaders of government, I hope you guys bring more initiatives and really, action-driven initiatives. We are going to do this. We are going to do that. We're going to do that beyond of what is being done so far. Because obviously, as a mother of 2 teenagers, I'm terrified every time that I hear another school shooting. Honestly, and I come from a third world country. I come from a third world country, Venezuela, who's going through a humanitarian crisis right now, and the president is trying to bring people on parole here. But at the same time, I said, we're a third world country, but we don't have a problem there. We have many problems, but we don't have that one. And as a mother, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. What takes this teenager, this individual, to feel so unloved and so unsupported, to feel so lost and so out of, self-love and love for humanity to go and do, a school shooting because they feel lost. So what can we do as a community? What can you do as a leader of government? I know I'm doing my best trying to say neuroscience to children. Not easy, but I'm doing my part. So thank you guys for having me here again. I hope that wasn't too long. But I think that's my main message. Y gracias de nuevo. Gracias. Roanoke College, I know, works very hardly to have a diverse community and to welcome Latino students. I know that for a fact. I have the honor to work with Dr. Jose Bayuelos, my friend seated there. He's the chairman of the Department of Modern Languages, and we have a radio show, the first one, English and Spanish, where we try actually to bring all the Latinx problems and concerns and tell them where they can find resources with Casa Latina and many others. So thank you again, muchas gracias, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Carolina. So we will go ahead and move on to Katie Zwacky from Points of Diversity. Are you going to come up here?
I'm gonna come up there,
Yes.
because I could be interested.
I feel bad that I told the Diversity Center to stand up and do my thing.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Roanoke County Democrats and candidates and professionals in the community. Some of them I feel like are very good friends, and others have come to hear what we have to say. I'm tempted to jump to where Carolina left off because I'm really focused on school issues right now, but I'll go ahead and start at the beginning as I planned. Last week, I called Dr. Deneen Evans to ask her to be involved with something with me, and I wound up being here with Dr. Deneen Evans. So that's the kind of power she exerts. But it is certainly what you've been able to put together, Deneen. I thank you. I am Katie Zwacky. I'm the executive director and one of the founders of Points of Diversity, the Roanoke Valley Points of Diversity, along with Dr. Evans, who helped us out at the very beginning of coming together, because we felt we needed to know more about the diversity right here in our Roanoke Valley. So what we've been doing for the last 9 years is getting people together to talk about all differences, racial differences, sexuality differences, language differences, ability differences, religious differences, any difference that you can think of. Because we know that when people sit down and respectfully listen to another's experience, it changes what their preconception of that other difference is. And the groups are formed so that people share their own story in a respectful way, others listen, and there's this proceeding after that. They come up with some kind of action, whether it's a personal action or a community action, that will create more inclusion in the Roanoke Valley community. Some of the topics that we have addressed are public housing, along with the help from Karen, and the inequity in property ownership and affordable housing. We have addressed community policing and some of the inequities that arise there. And of course, racism is truly the lens through which we look at everything. And we are certainly spending a lot of time addressing the discrimination being felt by our LGBTQ, especially our young people. We have done about one forum a year for young people, high school students. And every time they say what they appreciate the most is having the opportunity to share with their peers how they're affected by their differences. In fact, the data that we have collected shows that 90% of the students that we work with want opportunities to talk more about their differences with their peers. They don't want us talking at them. They want to talk to each other about what they're seeing in their lives. 80% wanted to learn more skills to address some of these discrimination activities, and 55% said that neither their school nor their communities did enough to stand up to resist prejudice and racism. So those are sobering statistics from our young people who really do think about what's going on. And sometimes people say, well, they're all into their phones and that's all. That's not true. We just had a 6-hour retreat for students who gave their attention for 6 whole hours talking about religious differences. So we know that students really do want to share with one another and learn from one another. What I would ask you to address is what's happening across the country in our public education, K through 12. I'm really concerned about the changing of history, the fact that history standards are being revised after all the work that was done to make it a more true picture of our history. I'm really concerned about the discrimination that's going on, and I know it's going on right here in our schools. And not just against students, but also against teachers. So that's what I really am concerned about you addressing. And to the prevention piece, I really appreciated Carolina talking about. That's what I did for 15 years in Roanoke County schools. And today, it's very difficult to do any kind of programming in schools. So that's something I would like you all to pay attention with, and I think I kept it at 4 minutes.
All right.
I appreciate it. And finally, last but certainly not least, Rabbi, appreciate it.
Have her extra minute.
Yeah, no more, absolutely.
Hello, everybody. I am Rabbi Kathy Cohen. I am the rabbi at Temple Emmanuel. And I also am the new vice chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Commission of Roanoke City. And I began about 8 months ago a community forum called the Community Peace Initiative. And I want to, just for a moment, to tell you how all of those come together and why they come together, and how I hope that our whoever becomes our state senator here can help to further this very important work. First of all, let me just give you a little background, which I think probably most of you actually do know. On October 27th of 2018, a white supremacist walked into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and murdered 11 Jews at prayer. This would have bothered me in any world. It would have bothered me whether it was a synagogue or a church or a mosque or a temple. It bothered me more, however, because this happened to have been the building in which my parents were married. It happened to have been the building in which several of my cousins still belong and go to pray, and it happened to have been the city in which I grew up. At that point in my life, my children had grown. My youngest had just graduated from Roanoke College, where my oldest graduated as well. And I knew that I had more time, and I felt an intense need to address the issue of both gun violence and anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, any kind of hatred, as my good friend Dr. Hale said, never rests. And anti-Semitism has not only not rested, it has increased logarithmically in the past 2 years. In fact, last year alone, there were over 4,000 reported incidents, which means that there were likely closer to 10,000 incidents in the United States of anti-Semitism. That included 91 bombs. It included several hundred assaults, significant harassment. I myself was the victim of a stalker here in Roanoke who was armed and tried to muscle his way into our building with the very distinct statement of getting to the rabbi. Unfortunately, it's not unusual and it's not shocking. 20 years ago in Roanoke, I had a death threat against me, and that was unusual and that was shocking. Where we are today is really very troublesome. Last year, the Virginia State House and Senate had 3 bills that they considered concerning anti-Semitism. They passed only one. Why? They were very much afraid that passing the other 2 might upset other communities, which to me is like saying we can't protect a community, because it might cause another community to not vote for us. And it was highly political, and it was simply wrong. When any community, be they Jewish, Muslim, Indian, Black, Hispanic, LGBTQI, I was missing, sorry. Whatever the rainbow of our life is, when any community experiences hatred, every community will experience hatred. And so, for me, the most important thing that we can do as a community, and that can happen in our Virginia government, is that the issue of hatred across the board be addressed. There should be no hatred that is legally acceptable or undefined against the Jewish community, and there should be none against the Muslim community. There should be none against the Black community and none against the Hispanic community or the Indian community or any other community that resides in this state. And if we don't stand up for loving one another, if we don't stand up for the idea, and I'm going to put this in my religious terms, but for those of you who are of an Abrahamic faith, I know you will agree with me. If we do not stand up for the idea that we are all created in God's image, then we have no reason to have been created. Together, and only together, and only when we make sure that our representatives represent that which is most important to us. And I have to say that which is most important to us has to be life. Life for our children, safety for our children, life for us, life for any minority group. The ability to live our lives in freedom and in safety. Then we have not done our job. We do not pressure towards that. When it comes to gun violence prevention, I ask you to please consider that this problem did not occur 2 years ago. This problem started in the 1990s, and it started with a tremendous amount of putting people in jail for minimal offenses and dividing families and breaking families and creating a generational poverty that is almost impossible to break. And we're not going to solve this problem by having more police on the streets or by having more divisive conversations about it. We are only going to solve the problem by breaking generational poverty, by offering educational opportunities, by ensuring healthcare access, and by making sure that each person has a hope for tomorrow and a hope for the future. So I know two of you very well. I have met the third. I wish all of you very good luck. You are phenomenal candidates. And I know that any of the three of you are going to do excellent work for us. I just hope that you keep your focus on what is most important, and that is the lives of your constituents.
Thank you so much. Can we do one round of applause just for the entire panel? Originally, I was going to have everybody switch out. If it's okay with the candidates, I'll call you all up. Would you all as opposed to perfect. All right. So, first, we have the lovely Lily Franklin. She is running for House District 41, which represents Western Roanoke and Montgomery County. So, without further ado.
Thank you everyone for having me here tonight. It's a little intimidating to speak after everyone that's just been on this panel. I feel not exactly qualified here, a little bit of imposter syndrome, but if we haven't met yet, my name's Lily Franklin, and I'm the Democratic nominee in the new 41st House District. You're all in new districts, no one knows their new lines, but essentially this is one of the new battleground districts around Virginia Tech University. And we need this seat to flip in order to flip the House back this fall. And so when I was driving here, I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to talk about at, sorry, when I talk to my so I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and I realized, I think we all have a story that brought us to this seat and to this table. For me, a lot of you know me from my work when I worked for Delegate Sam Rasool. I was his chief of staff for a number of years. But before that, I was a teacher. And I taught in rural Mississippi for a summer, and then I also taught in Appalachia. But during my time in rural Mississippi, I taught in a poor community and also a community of color. That was the same summer that Philando Castile was shot and murdered in Minnesota by a police officer. It was a horrible situation, and I had this student, this 12-year-old young boy, who looked up at me and he said, "Ms. Franklin, why am I even here? I'm just going to end up just like him." And for me, being the 21-year-old that I was, I didn't have an answer for him. And I went to somebody that was a little bit more wise than me by a lot. And she said, hold on to that story, hold on to his humanity, and hold on to what you felt in that moment, because this is just the beginning of your journey, and this is just the beginning of his story, and using that to look at and see the world in a new light. And that's what I'm taking into this experience, this running for office, is that you have to remember people's humanity first. On the flip side, my opponent, you're going to hear a lot of what he's going to talk about in this race, and he's going to be talking about education and continuing to delete history, even though we don't even teach it all already. He's going to continue to try to take rights away from women. He's going to continue to put down our LGBT communities. And for me, when I'm elected to this seat, I'm going to fight for our communities and make sure that I remember that humanity, that we look back into all of the code across Virginia and think about what it means to make sure that everybody has an equitable access to opportunities across housing, across health insurance, and even going all the way down to wills and titles and things along those lines. Because right now, people do not have that equitable access. And so I encourage you this fall that you will join me in supporting our communities, and just know that for me, I will fight for you all in any way I can, and that I will be a champion for these issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Jade Harris, who is the representative for the 3rd Senate District. It touches on some of northern Roanoke County, but also like 7 other counties and towns north of us. She has quite a large district, but join Jade.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay?
No.
That's fine. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be here to speak before you all tonight. I'm really excited. There's a lot of things I wanted to talk about tonight, but I think tonight what I really want to talk about is love. I'm an author, a writer, a storyteller. And you're getting your words out there, putting out your truthful feelings, your true in your heart stuff, right? You're getting it on the page, you're putting it out there for the world to see. A lot of people don't want that to happen. And I'm going to tell you a story from when I was 5 years old. I don't remember this happening. This is something my mother told me. She said one day I came home from kindergarten. I grew up kind of sheltered. We didn't play with kids in our neighborhood. My mom didn't want us to experience anything at first, so I really didn't have experience with other kids. So I was in kindergarten that day, and I came home from school crying. And she asked me what was wrong. And I told her, somebody told me that they didn't want me playing with them, that we could not play together because of the color of my skin. Nothing more, nothing less, that was it. We could not play together. And I was so devastated by that, not because of what my skin looked like, but because that child had such hatred for me for no reason, essentially. I didn't have hatred for that child for being white. I wanted to play with that child. We were a part of a community. A kindergarten class is a community, believe it or not. And when you have that sort of dysfunction, you can't operate in a society. And we see it today even. But moving on, in this little story I'm going to tell you, I'm not afraid to say it. I grew up in the church, and a certain verse I heard pretty often in my Sunday school classes, and this one's very dear to me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I've applied that not only to myself as a Black queer woman, but to my friends, to my community members, to people I don't even know. I invite them in with love. I don't have to know anything about you. And that's why I consider people, my neurodivergent friends, my trans friends, my immigrant friends, my friends who have English as a second or even third language. They are my friends. And we need to see that kind of activism, that kind of love in our General Assembly. And it's not there right now. We're trying to get there. But there are people who don't want that to happen. There are people who are doing everything in their power to limit the possibilities that we have before us. They're doing it through attacking education. They don't want real history to be taught. They don't want that awful history, the truth about lynchings, about what happened not just in the 1890s, but what happened in the 1990s. They don't want that taught in schools. They don't want us to walk in this world with empathy and love for one another because it doesn't further their agenda of hatred and self-serving self-satisfaction that they get from keeping us all divided and fighting against one another. And, in the General Assembly, that's something that I would take actual concrete steps to prevent, avoid, combat. These little earrings aren't just for show. I'm talking about walking in love, but these are swords. I'll fight for love too. We need to fight against anti-Semitism, transphobia, racism, attacks against our disability community. I mean, this is a little policy wonkish, but it is what it is. When you take the idea of creating private schools and giving them public funds, those private schools can say, hey, we don't want any disabled kids. If you're blind, if you have Down syndrome, if you're deaf, you can't go to school with these other children. And then you have to be in the public schools who have had funding taken away and given to these schools that have curated the type of students they want to see. I don't want to see that in Virginia. It doesn't need to happen in Virginia. I'll fight it every step of the way. And again, I'm applying that to all of my policies going forward. We need to see it with affordable housing. That's housing equality. That's where we're going to see some real concrete steps made forward in love. We need to see it with the way we treat healthcare in this country, in Virginia specifically. We need to see it in so many different fields, and it can be done, and I will do it. And I just want to again say thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you for letting me speak kind of off the cuff. And thank you all for your inspiring stories, what you came here and told tonight. I'm soaking it up like a sponge. I just want to say that. But again, thank you so much. I hope I didn't go over time.
Thank you, Jay. All right. Next we're going to have the three candidates for Senate District 4. So lines will be drawn. If you don't know what your district is, go to EPAP and put it in. There is a primary June 20th for Senate District 4, and there are three candidates for it. Up first, we are going to have D'Anthony D.A. Pierce.
Can everybody hear me all right? Oh, yeah, I just want to say thank you to the Roanoke County Democratic Committee for hosting this forum. Also thank everybody in attendance for taking interest in such an important topic. We've been discussing social justice, and sometimes I feel the words social justice can seem vague. I personally like to think of social justice in different terms. First, instead of social, I like to think, is this for everyone? And second, instead of justice, I like to think, is it fair and equal? So when we say we want social justice, in my mind, I'm thinking we want something to apply first for everyone, and second, in a fair and equal way. And if it doesn't, then we have to ask why and what can we do to help make it for everyone and in a fair and equal way. I'd like to share a brief story about myself real quick. I can remember when my mother helped me get my first cell phone. It was one of those Nokia bar phones. It had Snake on it. You could only text like 20 characters. And there definitely wasn't a camera on it. I was 16, working my first job in the mall at Sbarro's. And for those from Roanoke, this is when Sbarro was on the opposite side of the food court. So back in the early 2000s. And the deal with my mother was she would put the phone in her name since I was a minor, but I had to pay the bill. I had to pay everything. So we went to the phone kiosk back then, and I remember the gentleman saying he first had to do a credit check. And I thought, that's odd. What does credit have to do with paying for a cell phone? I also thought, what is credit? In my teenage mind, I was like, if we got the money, we should be able to get the phone and the plan. And if we stop paying for the plan, then obviously you can just cut the phone service off. Don't you know that sometimes you may have to pay more for something just because you have a low credit score? I would later understand that we were likely being charged more for that cell phone plan at the time simply because my mother fell on hard times many years before, after divorcing my abusive father, who gave no financial support while she raised 4 kids on a single income. I would later come to realize that my mother was likely always being charged more. It probably still is today. Whether it's for personal loans to help make it through tough times, her car loans, and even her insurance at the time. I shared that story to highlight how people with less income or lower credit scores are often charged more than those who can actually afford to pay more, the assumption being if someone is unable to pay back a loan, at least more money was received on the front end. Now I understand that these lending and banking practices have been going on for a long time. But looking at these examples, I have to ask, are the same types of loans being offered for everyone in a fair and equal way? Another way to say this is, are we all being given the opportunity to pay the same price for the same things? Until this day, the answer is often no. I don't think that's social justice. I don't think that's the same for everyone. I don't think that's fair and equal. Let's take this one step further and zoom out a little bit. So as we look at problems facing minority communities, members of the LGBTQ+ community, individuals with mental and physical impairments, and many other vulnerable groups that might at some point find themselves in disparate situations, we should ask ourselves, are protections and rights being applied for everyone in a fair and equal way? Is access to services or support being provided for everyone in a fair and equal way? Is the environment or drinking water in low-income communities being treated the same as water and the environment in high-income communities in a fair and equal way? Are schools that are majority minority, with the most students being eligible for free and reduced meals, which were basically all the schools I grew up in, are they funded the same when compared to schools that are mostly white with students from families with higher incomes in a fair and equal way? And oh, hey, by the way, if you didn't know, the reason schools in the same district are funded differently based on the school's neighborhood's home values is from the Jim Crow era. That's how you can have 2 students from the same town in the same school district attend separate schools and have 2 totally different learning outcomes because the financial resources were never meant to be the same, even though public schools have been integrated since the 60s and 70s. So as a legislator, I have to look around and ask what things are meant for everyone. For example, whether it be medical care access and affordability, housing, or education, and are those things being provided in a fair and equal way? And if it's discovered that they are not, then the next step is to ask, what can we do legislatively to level the playing field? Particularly for those excluded from this thing we believe is the American dream. We call for social justice. We call for things meant for everyone in society to be fair and equal. Because we know the more people that thrive, the more everybody else thrives. I'm running for state senator because I want all Virginians to thrive, especially those in this district, the area I was born and raised, the area where I'm now raising my family. Recognizing the fact that I've been blessed to get where I have because people have given me opportunities that were made available to me. I like to put things in place that can help raise others and to make sure people aren't falling through the cracks and backwards in terms of their quality of life. Social justice is when we all have an equal opportunity to succeed in this country. And that's what I'll fight for as a legislator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DA. Next, we will move on to one of the other candidates running for Senate District 4. That would be Luke.
You want to see someone scary with the campaign team? Everyone hear me all right? Hold this up this close. I'm not going to use what I wrote at all. I'm just completely off the cuff. But honestly, before we start, there's only 2 people left. I know people have been sitting for a long time. Don't get them to do this. Everybody get up for about 10 seconds. Kind of just shake up if you're willing and able. That's I'll tell you, I've been talking for a long time.
Thank you.
Try to leave after us. Thanks, Luke. I will stick with my remarks so that I can go as quick as possible. So that people can get home. So I introduce myself. My name is Luke Priddy, and if you can see my pin from up here, I use he, him pronouns. And I'm working to earn your vote in the Democratic primary this June. And if I'm successful, I'm working to keep this district blue this coming November. And I'm hoping you all will support me in doing so. So following 2 years of progress under Democratic control of Richmond, we are all witnessing attempts to roll back that progress and social justice in the Commonwealth by our current governor and the new majority that's in the House of Delegates. We saw radical movement forward of things like LGBTQI rights, religious freedom, disability rights, and what we are witnessing are just failed attempts to take us in the wrong direction. You'll just want to make sure how important you all see that this election is, that there have been, we're in year 2 of this new administration, of which they've attempted to take things unsuccessfully in a direction of which they can, although they're doing the best that they can. But next year, what's really at risk, we have so many members that are retiring from the General Assembly. We have members that are retiring from the House of Delegates, retiring from the Senate. And then at the same time, I don't know if this has ever been brought up while campaigning, everyone's moving to a new office building, which is a wonderful opportunity. But if you really think about it, it's going to create chaos. And the only stable thing that is going to be there, that's been there for the past 2 years, is this current administration who's been trying to take us in the wrong direction. Regardless of which party takes control, this opportunity with the amount of turnover, what they might be able to sneak through, what they might be able to do, we have to be paying very close attention to what those things are. So now I've started on a very happy note. And I thought of so many sad and troubling stories as everyone spoke up here about important issues to them and what's impacting their community and their neighbors and their friends. I want to cover a little bit of some of the progress that we have seen over the past few years and where we can see ourselves going in the future. So first I'm going to focus, I'm only going to go over 3 issues tonight: disability rights, religious freedom as it relates to the Jewish community, and then LGBTQIA+ rights. So as it relates to disability rights, one thing that I'm happy to report, and this is thanks to the work of Roanoke City Council, my council member Trish White-Boyd, I, and 5 other members who came together and had a vision that a community member brought to them to expand accessibility for parking in downtown Roanoke. I know everyone complains about parking and how they're able to shop, where they can go, but think about how that affects people with disabilities. So we had an individual who he does not use his arms. They do not work. He has issues being able to pay the meter directly and being able to move his vehicle for the amount of time that he had allotted. So Roanoke City Council took a forward movement step. They have updated so that you can, if you have a handicap license plate or a placard on your car, you do not have to use the meter, and you can leave your vehicle in a spot for 10 hours within a 24-hour time period. And that is just one of the small examples of something that's happening at the local level, something that we did not even need the Dillon rule to be able to do because we can regulate parking as we decide in our locality. But as it relates to the General Assembly, I want to focus on a piece of legislation that Senator Edwards put in year after year after year after year, and finally we were able to get something through. It's something, it was called the LEAD CAPO. It focused on language acquisition for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. Because in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in order to go to school, you have to have a certain English literacy. You have to be able to read it, you have to be able to speak it, you have to be able to write it. But we don't track the progress for individuals who are under the age of 5 who don't use a spoken language like English. We don't track for individuals that use American Sign Language or some kind of other visual mode. Now, there are other states that have had models that have adopted policies. So Senator Edwards brought a bill in 2018, and it failed gloriously. 15 votes to 0, it didn't make it out of committee. So we brought it back, and in 2019, it also failed gloriously, but this time it got passed by with a letter, with a year-long study to see, is there anything that can be done to get this bill through in the future? So we worked on it for an entire year. We came back to the General Assembly, and that next year we were able to get it out of committee in the Senate. We were able to get it off the floor in the Senate. We were able to get it over to the House, out of a subcommittee, out of the full committee, referred to another committee, and then Lily knows what I'm going to say. We got sent to appropriations, so that's just a little foreshadowing. It didn't go anywhere. Bill died. Despite having near unanimous support almost everywhere, despite the fact that we got money in the Senate budget, which is huge, so we just couldn't get the money in the House budget to get it done. So Senator Edwards and I came up with a plan to do the only thing that we knew left to do in this situation. We just gave the bill to somebody else. We removed our ego from the situation that we have to push this thing through, that we have to be some kind of savior for this population, and we gave it to another legislator, and with 0 changes to the introduced language, the next year that it was introduced, and passed it was signed by the governor. That's just how some things go for the General Assembly, but today, because of that legislation, we are now tracking the language acquisition of children who are under the age of 5. And I'm going to pivot into religious freedom, and Rabbi Cohen did take what some of my remarks are, so I promise I'll be a little bit shorter. There were 3 bills that were introduced this last year in the General Assembly that sought to combat anti-Semitism, and only one of them did pass. And that one has a non-binding language that will help the public and officers train to identify that in their community. But they couldn't agree on what that legal language would be, and I know she wouldn't say it directly, but members of a coalition, Virginia Coalition of Human Rights, were worried that the definition that was being put together was going to have negative implications on perceptions of Israel and the state of Palestine. And so the General Assembly, the House and the Senate could not agree, although there is one more victory that you could have recorded. And May, the month that we're in now, the General Assembly has recognized that this year and every year going forward that this is Jewish American Heritage Month. That is something to be celebrated, something that does not require the signature of the governor. The House and the Senate just got to agree on that together. Well, that is so important because this is where I have a little Easter egg on the back of my postcard for everyone who got it, for everyone who didn't. I think one up on the way out. There's a blue square at the top. For anyone who knows what the blue square is or doesn't, I invite you to go to standuptojewishhate.org to see. This blue square on the computer screen on the scene here makes up about 2% of the entire size of this. That is the Jewish population in America. And Virginia is actually slightly under 2%. And even though it's below the national average, Virginia has the 13th highest number of anti-Semitic incidents that happened in 2022. The General Assembly needs to come together to do something to work on this policy moving forward. This is what moves me into the final issues, I can wake back up before this is over, which LGBTQIA rights. Now, each individual deserves love and to exist and to identify as they see fit and to identify with the family that they see and love around them. There was legislator Delegate Iron Shin who introduced a bill in order to add an additional exemption to the Virginia Human Rights Act. It's supposed to be an additional protection so that someone could wear religious garb or a symbol that represented their faith and not be discriminated against for it. But where we have to worry with the current administration, they took this well-meaning bill that went near unanimous through the entire General Assembly, and they changed what the definition of religion meant in there, and they tried to broaden it in a way that would have allowed for discrimination and persecution against LGBT individuals from the very intent of why the bill was put there in the first place. This is just one of the examples of why nuances are so important, why it's so incredibly important to use inclusive language, especially around issues like reproductive rights. When we as leaders focus narrowly just on women's rights, that language can be considered trans-exclusionary in the realm of radical feminism. And we neglect to recognize that this issue impacts on all birthing persons. We neglect to recognize the discrimination that is impacted on people because of their mere femininity, and not their biological or physiological characteristics of who they are. I had a supporter recently describe in a situation to me how concerned they were with all the bills that they're seeing across the United States, because they said that it is leading trans individuals to kill themselves. And I told them that that perception was wrong, that they are not killing themselves, that the steps that we are taking, these attacks on our trans students and individuals, they are not killing themselves. We are othering them and ostracizing them in a way that we are murdering them ourselves. If we do not stand up for the most marginalized populations in our communities, who truly are we as leaders in protecting the next generation and making sure that positive impact moves forward? It saddens me when children in this district are being bullied for their gender identity in the bathroom that they use, like down the street at Glenver High School. I'm not afraid to call it out. As a politician, I can take it. It angers me when in Montgomery County they adopt a policy that prohibits pride flags from being displayed in the classroom because it's considered a divisive image. You know, we need more than elected officials that will just promote tolerance. We need leaders who will use their power and privilege to stand up for the most marginalized. So I will come to a close now. As you rely on us, these candidates and community leaders up here today, to fight for social justice, so that every individual can lead fulfilling and dignified lives, look for who you want to lead on those issues. Understand how crucial this seat is to holding the majority in the Senate of Virginia. Look at Texas, look at Florida, and look at the actions that we've seen with the Tennessee Three and Zoe Sepper in Montana. Then look up here at these candidates today and decide who you want to represent you in the General Assembly. My name is Luke Priddy, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm working to earn your vote in the Democratic primary this June, and if I'm successful, I hope to keep the district blue this November.
Thank you, Luke. And certainly not least, we have Trish. Before I hand the mic over to Trish, if anybody has any questions they've written or they want to have answered, please just write it down and Beth will collect them. And with that.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And first, I want to say thank you. I know it's been a long evening. I will try to be brief and stick with, I think they said 7 minutes. Now I'm told it's 5 minutes. But I will say thank you to the Roanoke County Democratic Committee for pulling this forum together. And thank you to all of our panel members, because really you have brought forward some really enlightening information. I am truly blessed to know most of you and have your contact, and I will certainly be in contact with you to make sure that I understand some of the things that concern you and that we are able to address them. So really, I appreciate that. It's hard to follow your colleague because he's already talked about some of the things that we've already done on council. Now I understand how the mayor feels. He's always the last one to speak, but I will say that I had some notes about some things that I was concerned about with social justice. And I will start with the Diversity Center and say that I have strong ties with the LGBT community, and I will always support their rights and freedoms. I've known Garland Gravely for years, and I met you, Muhammad, recently. And I've worked together, with members of the LGBTQ community to address some of the concerns, and I will continue to do that. I'm thankful to have been endorsed by the Downtown Roanoke Queens and Peter Volleson, and these are people who know and trust me, and who know that I will continue to advocate for the LGBT community. And I say our community because I have family and we are members of that community. So I will certainly continue to advocate for the LGBT community and certainly reject any nonsense or proposals or policies put forth by Youngkin. He's truly out of his mind. He's gone too far. And I think, like Ms. Pretty said, with Glimmer, not even allowing the children to wear anything with rainbows on it. I mean, these are elementary students. So I think it's nonsense, and I would certainly reject any of those policies when I am senator for District 4. Talking about Blue Ridge Independent Living, I can certainly appreciate everything that you said, Karen, because independent living does for our community. As a member of Roanoke City Council, we have also tried to do our part. And Mr. Pretty already talked about what we did with the parking situation. Thank you for taking that part from me. But that was something that we saw that was necessary and that we did. I also like the fact that Mr. Sproul tried and is trying to pass legislation, something you talked about, Karen, that would remove that limit on minimum wage, that people with disabilities are paid less than what the minimum wage is because of that disability. That is totally insane. That is unheard of. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I had already put that in my notes as something I would like to see changed and something that I would certainly address as senator for the 4th District. And I've already spoken with Mark Carey to talk about legislation at the state level. What Mr. Pretty did not mention is that we are the first to produce an ordinance of that magnitude to allow people with disabilities to be able to park for that length of time and not have to register their decals. So we are always setting a precedence here in Roanoke City. I think we have been a progressive city, and I would continue to have that mindset and continue to be a progressive senator when I'm in Richmond. As far as the Jewish community, Rabbi, I just want to say thank you for opening my eyes on a number of things, and thank you for the story that you shared this evening. I know that there are a lot of incidents, and like you said, they're not even reported. But I do like the fact that we have House Bill 2261 that was passed in 2219 that hopefully will combat some of this. But what it will do is allow the state police to do a better job at tracking it. But we need a system where we can make sure that those acts are being tracked as hate crimes and anti-Semitism. Because it's not just in this community, it's all over the state. And I understand why you would be afraid to go to your car at night leaving, services. And I understand that, and I appreciate that. Also on points of diversity, going back to what Katie said, you guys dumped a whole lot of stuff on us, and we had to process it in a short period of time. But I'm glad that I'm in contact with you. I know it's been a long evening, so I'll try to go through it. But Katie, I cannot say enough about what you've done and the work that you've done as far as changing the narrative, and the work that you've done in the Gainsborough community to talk about that pain that we've experienced in the Gainsborough community. That was one of the reasons that I felt the need to talk about the Gainsborough community and the pain. And you've done a really good job. And I think we've already talked to you about following up with Hidden in Plain Sight. For those of you that don't know, we started a documentary called Hidden in Plain Sight, and the impetus for it was to talk about the things that have happened in Roanoke City as it relates to urban renewal, gentrification, or whatever you want to call it. It's a painful history and it's a dismal history, but we felt the need to share that because we cannot heal and grow as a community until we acknowledge it, number one, and then we deal with it and we continue to heal. So Katie, I just want to say thank you for what you do with points of diversity. And we need you, and we will continue to work with you, and especially in changing the narrative and making sure that we are an inclusive city and that we are an inclusive state. And that's what I will do as Senate. And Dr. Hale, we spent a lot of time together, and I appreciate the fact that you brought up the issue with the voting and how they are trying to set us back on voting. I think somebody mentioned that, I think it was you, Brandon, talked about in the last session, we have 45 days of early voting, which is really helpful for families and people who work. You know, there are a lot of people who can't get to the registrar's office from 8 to 5. So we have 45 days to do that. General Assembly tried to move it back to 7 days. And, you know, when you think you're moving forward, just like with the Dobbs decision, you know, in Roe v. Wade, when you think you're making progress, you get hit in the stomach and you're back again. So I appreciate what you do, Dr. Hale, within the ACP, with the voter registration, always advocating for voting rights. And for those of you who may or may not know, in City Council, and Mr. Pretty, you were there in the audience cheering us on and helping us with that legislation to change the election date in Roanoke City from May to November. I know a lot of my sorors who are here were there that night. A lot of them spoke. That our City Council election was a hidden election. We now vote in November, but guess what? A year later, the entire state now votes in November. So those are the sorts of things that I think are important, you know, to make sure that we protect our voting rights, we protect our democracy. And so I just want to say thank you to Dr. Hale and the NACP for continuing to do that and to continuing to be an advocate. And Dr. Desai, I just want to thank you for what you said. When I think about you, I think about mental health issues and some of the challenges that we have with that. I think that Delegate Rasool, talked about trying to figure out ways to get some of the people who are in some of our mental facilities who are suffering from drug addictions, who are taking up a lot of the beds and a lot of spaces, so we don't have spaces for our mental health patients. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. But then when I heard you talk about the discrimination, I appreciated that because I met with a group of Indian women about 3 weeks ago. It was about 25 or 30 of them, and I did not realize the magnitude of racism that they experienced because a lot of them said they lived in Roanoke County and Botetourt County, and we know sometimes some rural areas may not be as friendly, but I did not know that they dealt with as much racism that they dealt with, because they're brown, saying you're brown. And I said, okay, I'm brown, I understand that, because I've had to deal with racism all my life, but I was glad to be able to discuss that with them so that they would know that I understand and that there is no place for racism, and I will continue to advocate for inclusion and diversity throughout the state of Virginia. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, Dr. Desai. So, there are a lot of things that were discussed tonight. I don't want to go over and repeat some of the things that were already said. That's one of the disadvantages of being last. But the one thing that I will say is that anyone who knows me knows that I am a listener and that I am a true advocate for the things that make sense. If it makes sense, I'm all about it. I'm all about inclusion and diversity. I was one of the first people to work with the Democratic Committee to advocate for our Democratic ticket, which had 3 gay openly males. And we were proud because that is the city that we live in. And Mr. Pretty is here today along with 2 of my other colleagues because we are here to advocate for people, not certain genders or anything. We are here to advocate for our community, for our residents as a whole. And that's what I will stand for. So when I am your senator in the state Senate District 4, I am your voice and I am your ears, and I will listen to you and I will advocate for you for the things that matter and that concern you. And I thank you for your time. I appreciate all of your patience this evening. It's been a long evening. And thank you so much again, Roanoke County Democratic Committee.
Thank you, Trish. And I would actually be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that, yes, there's a primary on June 20th, but early voting is already open for Senate District 4. So, real quick. We were going to do a Q&A section, but for the sake of time and to make sure that everybody gets out of here on time, if you did have a question, again, please submit it to Beth, and we will make sure that those get answered. On our social media. And I'm throwing her a curveball because I told her we were going to have some questions, but I'm going to hand it over to Barb to close us out.
Can we please get the panelists just stay for a second so we can get a quick shot?
Well, I just want to say, wasn't this an unbelievable, wonderful evening? Events, programs like this don't happen without unhealthy contributions, and I'd like to collectively thank the panel and the candidates for being here and participating. In addition, I know Deneen said something about these shirts, but even though I was a little remiss because I was out of town, the committee consists of Deneen, me, Ann back there, Beth, who is right there, Jessica, and Brandon, of course, could not have done it, and Marcus, as always, great. I finally would like to thank Roanoke County Dems for continuing their vision for a more inclusive future for everybody that serves and protects us all.
I'd like to give one quick shout out again to Roanoke College for sponsoring and allowing us to hold the event here. To Teresa, the help with the logistics, and once again to Reverend Shusha. Thank you so much.
Oh, my God.